Good morning on the West Coast, good afternoon on the East Coast, and happy days everywhere in between. Today is Wednesday, October 30th, and as I always say, it's a beautiful day to have a webinar. I'm John Yarrington, CEO of the Performance Marketing Institute, a 501c6 not-for-profit trade association dedicated to protecting, promoting, and advancing the direct-to-consumer, performance-driven marketing industry. And on behalf of the entire PDMI family, it's my pleasure to welcome you back to a fun-filled and exciting episode of the PDMI Take 20. As a reminder, the PDMI Take 20 is a quick hitting roundtable discussion led by industry experts on trending topics all in roughly 20 minutes. And today we're joined by a duo of incredibly talented industry leaders, including Chris Pizzurro of Leap Media Group and Ron Pruett of the Boston Associates. And together we'll be exploring the world of shoppable TV and how performance brands can find the right opportunities to capitalize on this expanding technology to create a new and booming marketplace. However, before we get started, please allow me to do a little housekeeping. If you'd like to ask a question, we encourage you to do so. Please use the questions tab located in your control panel. Also, please note, you're welcome to ask questions throughout today's conversation, but we will hold our eyes to the end of our discussion. Alrighty, folks. With that said, it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. Presidents take his birthday off. He's the fearless Chris Foster. Chris is Vice President of Business Development at Modern Postcard, a direct marketing agency located in Carlsbad, California. In addition to his day job, Chris teaches brand strategies at UCSD extension courses, and he's the chairperson of the PDMI Brand Response Council. As always, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. And do you know today is our Dalmatian episode? That's right, number 101 and counting. Lucky number 101. And it looks to me like you've come equipped this time, Chris.
I sure have, John. This is a fantastic baseball jersey from the beautiful folks at PDMI celebrating Take 20's 100th episode. PDMI Take 20, 100. It's got the member, and just so we don't forget, I've got this forever. So to everybody who has been a part of these Take 20s as a guest and as an audience member, and to everyone at the PDMI with John and Thomas, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to serve the industry and to serve the ecosystem with these fantastic broadcasts. And it has been a privilege, an absolute privilege and pleasure to be able to do these. So thank you, John and Tom, for the opportunity. Thank you, guests, Chris and Ron, and thank you to all of my guests for the past several years, getting up to episode 100 and now 101. So as we love to say, upward and onward. You ready to start the show?
We do, Chris. Well, you're fantastic. We love you to death. Have another fun episode. Guys, put your seatbelts on. You're on for a ride.
Thank you. Right on. Well, we are going to jump in. Chris and Ron, thank you so much. We are getting ready to go. And when it comes to shoppable TV, what I think is interesting about this topic is that years ago, we had discussed what could possibly become real shoppable TV. Right? This was 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago in previous PDMIs, but it looks like the future might finally be here. At PDMI West, NBCU, Roku, and Samsung, they all revealed shoppable apps and experiences so consumers can see an item on a program, select, consider, and actually purchase directly from their phone. Sean Robertson showed the shop the moment dream with NBCU is kind of now weaving into the fabric of all of our customer experiences. So the questions that come up is, what does this look like in terms of promotion, behavior, and actual lift for brands? Will consumers pause their content in the middle of a program and actually go shop? Will they remember if they don't do the action in the moment and get back to it? Is the context of a product in the content experience more persuasive than at other consideration points when someone might be thinking about purchasing? If they see a knife during the cooking show, is it that moment of seeing the knife working that compels them to buy versus another time when they might be in their kitchen and get a Facebook ad? So these are all the questions that we still have about shoppable TV. So Ron, we're going to start with you. Why don't you just talk about your involvement now with shoppable TV?
Thank you. I'm going to be your resident skeptic here. I want you to know.
Yes.
I'm just going to say that right off the top. And I think it's important to separate TV commerce from mobile commerce. Shoppable videos definitely having their moment, but as Chris and I both know, it's been a long time coming, probably about 15 years, which is why I'm a little bit of a skeptic. My personal history with shoppable video TV shopping goes back a little ways. I got involved with web startups in the late 90s. So, you know, the beauty of the web was it was really built around the concept of click commerce and anything commerce, frankly. The video component was really secondary in many respects. And then I fell into DRTV, into infomercials after that, and then into home shopping. And along the way, was looking at something very deeply called addressable TV, which is when I met Chris Pizzurro, who was really pioneering a lot in that space. And part of the reason why I and my colleagues were looking at this sort of component was shoppable TV and then shoppable video. They were running in parallel tracks. And I think shoppable video evolved because the web and a lot of the web pioneers actually drove it into being, which promoted the TV sort of executives into playing catch up. So I would say that effectively where we are now, I feel like I've been playing in this game now for a number of decades, really, which is why I'm a little bit skeptical, and we can talk about it as we go here.
Roger, well, that makes sense. I appreciate that experience because I think it gives you a perspective that some folks might not have. So Chris, you've got a very specific media experience with RVTV. It's a niche audience. It's a niche channel. It's an alignment of content and the consumers, and then perhaps products that can fit both. Is this a unique opportunity to connect these niche products with niche subcultures in a shoppable kind of experience?
We're giving it a try, Chris. For those of you who don't know, yeah, at Leap Media we'll take 2-hour blocks of programming. So we have a travel block, and we air those 4 half-hour travel shows on RVTV, among other places. But RVTV it's a recreational vehicle television. It's a travel channel from the good folks at Canela Media. So say a consumer is watching one of our Explorer shows. They go around exploring different places around the world, and let's just say the show's in China. In there, we will create a unique QR code, and we will embed that for 25 seconds inside a 30-second spot that airs, during the show, with the VO that says, "Thinking of traveling to China, like your Explorer hosts, scan the QR code and build a package at Expedia.com." So it is a way to draw the content and those hosts directly associated with the show and driving them to Expedia via a QR code. And then it takes you right to a page on China and recommends, hotels in Beijing. So it's really fishing where the fish are. So one experience where, we're, like you said, just really trying to bring niche content and really just try to turn up the contextual aspects of it. If that doesn't work, we also do what we call long form brand engagements, which essentially are just really good looking infomercials. So again, on RVTV, one of those shows is actually a half-hour travel show from Expedia. So it's actually produced by the Expedia folks. And so for instance, right now we have a show on Dominican Republic, and we'll soon replace that with Jordan. And then as people are watching the hosts travel around Jordan and go to Petra and go to Amman and all those sorts of things, we will have a URL code that's embedded that says, go to Expedia and book a trip. So different ways we're trying to make it shoppable so that within the experiences, and we're trying all sorts of different things In this case, we can talk more about other technologies that you mentioned, but these are the two we're trying in terms of branded content, QR codes, URL, anything to get the consumer to shop and engage.
In the moment, right? I like that. And what's interesting is that shoppable TV comes in so many different flavors, right? I don't think that someone investigating that China package or a package to the Dominican Republic will, in that moment, in that space of time, take out their credit card and actually buy it. They're going to explore, they're going to look at it, they're going to talk to partners, they're going to come back and forth. So that's kind of one part of that shoppable experience, but it gets them engaged and puts that top of funnel, puts them into the funnel to start considering, right? Whereas if you're having a knife on a chef show, you expect them to buy that knife in the moment because, hey, I'm gonna move along. So I love that difference and the contrasts. And it also changes, I think, where you see the content, whether you see the content at home or maybe in other places like even your phone or a computer or perhaps even an airplane. So we know that we're making more connections with influencers and other types of programming, and in-flight programming is something that's come up now. So the Bold Baking Network is now connected with Delta and some in-flight entertainment. So Ron, I got a question for you. Do you think that these experiences have a part to play in these kinds of connections and in these kinds of media environments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you said earlier about the top of funnel and engagement is exactly how we look at it. So Bold Baking is Bigger Bolder Baking as well, one of the biggest baking websites in the world. We just relaunched a podcast, which is also a leading podcast. We're launching a fast TV network. We actually work with Leap Media on traditional linear programming. And we also just recently launched a content partnership with Delta. So what we've been trying to do is build around content, community, and then commerce. You'll probably hear it a lot and have heard it a lot, but we're trying to make it real. And the fulcrum of all that is really the collection of data. And I think that, was a missing piece on a lot of the, shoppable video historically. But we do believe that, in today's world, if you're really building around communities, you have to be in a lot of different places, right? Appealing to different people. Consideration and context are going to be different. Some may lead to purchasing paths, for instance, for baking goods in our situation, if you're on the back or watching on the back of an airplane seat, you might not be pressing any buttons over the Atlantic or Pacific, but you will be engaged. So I think though today to build a brand, build a category, you have to be really omnipresent, but that doesn't mean that your purchasing will be.
Correct. No, I love that. I love that distinction, Ron, where whatever stage you're in with awareness or consideration or kind of getting close to purchase, you're getting these impressions from a variety of channels. But you're right, which channel is right for which stage is going to be different for each one. Everyone has a job to do. But the idea is that be ready when they're ready to buy in whatever media they're looking at. And speaking of that, it's a connection. Now you said content, community, and commerce. There's also the data piece. I also think there might be a technology piece too that kind of is within this space, right? So, Chris, we saw the Shop the Moment demo from NBCU where the users had a remote. They went to the product cart, then a QR code, then they changed devices and used their phone to facilitate the transaction. I guess a question that I have for you is, what kind of other technology advances do you think are going to happen to promote this kind of behavior? Are you seeing anything on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, not only on the horizon, but like you just mentioned, a lot of good tools that are either been in market or just haven't been adopted yet or coming to market. First off, the good old push to our from a URL still works cross-platform, and I do think part of that is because people do have their mobile phone right next to them, right? Whether they're watching traditional TV or now they're watching fast channels or now they're watching AVOD, whatever that may be. The fact that you have we all know your mobile phone, it's attached to you, you have it right there. That really does become a great mechanism to go back. So just back to that idea of, URL sitting right there. We see that working. Our partners, marketing architects, their client Goriana Jewelry, we have them placing their 30s in Leap's, our lifestyle block of programming, a show called Liftoff. And that works because it's contextual, just like our Expedia example, but also it is at scale. And that's a lot of what comes down to it, is the fact of, okay, you can do it, but in order to move the needle on purchasing, it does need to be at scale. And so really a URL code going to a mobile phone, that can be at scale and that works. As far as other tech advances, look, like Ron mentioned, him and I got together, we worked on advanced advertising, and we had a cable remote 14 years ago where a consumer could click and buy. Like, we've had this, and it worked well. The results were good. The problem was there was not enough scale to that, and by the time you deployed everything, it was too expensive. So I think now really what's changed it is that the economics, because you're doing everything IP or you're doing everything mobile, you don't have to worry about the cable operator building it out and it being expensive. So now we have the scale and it's not so expensive. And plus you do have technologies like those from Brightline that's powering a lot of the programmers, and where you can just click and have Hulu send you something right to your email address that they have on file. So I really do think I agree with Ron that both of us have been a little skeptics, a lot of stopping and going, but this time around that there are enough options that can do it at scale and doing it at the right price. That's where the technology has really come into play.
Sure, and go ahead.
I just want to add one thing, because I agree the hardware in the day was clunky if it worked at all. It was impossible to collect data. And I think one other critical component is the fact that the traditional broadcasters, they didn't have the cultural DNA to think about the concept of really commerce. It was all ad driven. It was with the advent of a lot of the, say, new streaming companies, Roku, Amazon, even Walmart with retail media networks, which are also driving a lot of the shoppable video today. They really came at it from a commercial, e-commerce or commerce perspective and data-driven perspective that I think has enabled a lot of this, and is then therefore pushing a lot of change onto the traditional incumbent players. And that's why I think there's a lot of opportunity now to take advantage of this.
I love that idea of the cultural DNA of Amazon is all e-commerce completely. That's how they started. So moving into quote unquote media or streaming or entertainment or content themselves, it's a natural fit that they actually bring their DNA into this ecosystem. It's kind of like, this new animal comes into the ecosystem, they bring all their cultural heritage and their baggage into the ecosystem anyway, and it changes it. I guess, Ron, I would ask you, do you think that shoppable TV will be a significant part of the direct response ecosystem, or do you think it's just going to be one of many channels that brands can utilize to drive engagement and sales?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be one of many. And I would venture to say if it's more than 5% of the mix, maybe up to 7%, I'd be surprised. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't take advantage of it. I mean, really, I think if you look at conversion rates, it's a much lower component. But I also think the game has shifted. I said earlier, TV to mobile. If you look at what from Alibaba or TikTok, Shein, a lot of the Chinese players, traditional Chinese players, are again driving a lot of this onto the mobile screen. So as a seller, I would absolutely be into this, but I would also be cognizant of the fact that from a bottom line perspective, I don't think it's going to be meaningful in the short term and somewhat meaningful in the medium term. That's just my belief on the behavioral aspect of it.
I like that approach and perspective. I think of Expedia, which is such an ubiquitous brand, right? It's everywhere. There's no mystery about who Expedia is and what they do. So they've already they've already gone past awareness. It's now just a question of the consideration, right? What do I choose it for, and how do I choose it for? And them choosing this channel, I think, is interesting because it seems to me, Chris, that it's almost like the niche traveler, like going to Jordan or the Dominican Republic. That's an exotic package, right? That's not, I'm going to take a flight and book a hotel to Sacramento. I mean, that is a significant buyer, and it's a type of buyer. So maybe there's a niche, maybe it has its place, right? So I think, Ron, when you said it gets maybe to 5% of the total mix, that's great, but maybe it's that right 5%, or maybe it's that incremental 5% that they wouldn't get normally.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, and exactly that point, guys, of, for us, it always starts with the client of, what are you trying to do? You know, what are you trying to achieve? Where are you trying to go? And these are all just tools in the toolbox. Right. And you know, Chris, you're exactly right when it comes to Jordan or Azerbaijan. Of people aren't just going to go there like they go to Sacramento. So therefore, the answer to that is, well, you know what? We do have to make a half-hour show that really shows them and gets into the right. So as opposed to, right, another tactic is, well, if you're just going to Sacramento, then, you know, it could be something much simpler than that. So that's exactly the kind of conversations. And then, Ron, back to what you said earlier about, you know, bigger, bolder baking and the work we do together there, of like, yeah, when you're on the Delta flight, we're probably not going to do a QR code, you know, to go do whatever. But when people are watching the TV specials that we do together, I remember that first campaign we did together, Ron, and you know, we brought up a QR code to do the cookbook that Gemma had out there in the marketplace, and plenty of people took us up on that offer, because that was a tool for that point in time on the device that they were watching, in the context they were watching, and that worked very well. So yeah, you know, back to your original question there, Chris, of, you know, these are all tools, and I think it's on, you know, everyone listening and to everyone here of, you know, these are just tools that we have to work with our brands, to work with our clients, and you're going to find, you know, the right execution at the right time on the right platform, and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think if I could add to the process, you know, of getting engagement, it's streamlined. You're going to get, you know, obviously increased revenues, but all the data. I mean, the whole aspect of that I love. But I think, again, for context, it will work much better in certain categories, say beauty,
sure,
right? Maybe some food. I like the idea of travel, you know, which is more of like a digital service. I could see that working well. But when, you know, it's a considered purchase, a larger purchase, again, anyone in the DR world, I think, would understand all these concepts, which is why I think it's actually ready-made for those who are used to performance marketing, direct response marketing. But the categories will be really important. And I think over time, of course, the data will show this.
Right. And what I also think too is broadening our definition of shoppable TV. Even if you're not buying the thing in the moment, the fact that you're engaging in a shoppable experience at some point of the funnel where you might purchase in the future, I still think that qualifies as a tactic for a shoppable experience. This has been fantastic, gents, and we are already at 11:25. So we are going to take some questions from the audience. John?
Hey guys, what a wonderful conversation. We've got a few questions to share here. Let's start with a now question. It feels like we've been talking about the advent of shoppable TV off and on for more than 20 years now. What might make this time around different?
I think what will make it different, and Ron touched on this a bit, at least from a Leap point of view, is that we really are merging from a producer point of view, right? We are content producers, work with our content producers. So I think there is a much closer alignment. Like we said, you know, in the past, with other technologies or other opportunities, it was just, well, you know, I'm going to put this here, and it's more ad driven, as Ron pointed out. I think this time around, there is much more coordination between the content producer and between the technology and between the platform, of all really being in sync together, that will yield better results than in the past. And what I mentioned before, just about cost-wise, just being and scale being more economically possible than in the past.
Yeah, I think I'd add, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to say YouTube, but if you look at what YouTube represents and the possibilities as well that YouTube represents, the new streamers, which are all driven by, I think, big commerce companies. We mentioned Amazon and others who have a real vested interest in trying to promote this. And then the fact that we have the mobile handset driving a lot of this, I think that's why it's real now. If we're all caught up in Insta scrolls, and I do sometimes do that, and you see something you like, you're going to push and buy. So I feel like the consumer behavior is now changing as well as a result of that. So it's more likely that shoppable video, will increase.
Great feedback, guys. Thank you so much. Let's move to a generation question. Gen Y and Gen Z viewers are used to one-click shopping, which means they're primed for shoppable TV experiences. However, how is Gen X and more importantly, the boomers adopting this new technology?
Should I start on this one? I always ask,
yeah, sure.
Do you know how old Steve Jobs would be today? And when they look up Wikipedia and they see the answer, which is older than 70, to me, of course, the older generation of boomers are going to be using shoppable video, shoppable TV, because they effectively have been for a long time. And I'd say that a lot of the pioneers in the web and some of this technology are in their 70s now. So I've heard this argument a lot, and I think it's been proven that while it might not be, the Gen Z adoption rate, it's going to be more significant than most people seem to expect.
Yeah, and same thing. We have various brands we work with, like as mentioned, various objectives, and that does go across various age, sex, lifestyle, and everyone engages at some point. Again, it's really just a matter of perhaps someone responds better on one platform than the other, but we do find across the board and look, we're again, multiple genres, multiple ages, and everyone engages one way or another when you do it correctly, I guess is what it comes down to.
Agreed across the board. I feel like you're right. It's going to be adopted amongst all generations, and I don't think there's a lot of hurdles at this point either. So good feedback, guys. Thank you. Let's move on to round out today's conversation with a kind of a truly shoppable question. It seems like this conversation is expansive in its view of what counts as shoppable these days, right? If you could design a truly shoppable experience using today's technology, what would it look like?
It all comes down to whoever can do it easier, frictionless. In the American economy, those are always the magic words. Ron, I think you mentioned Amazon earlier. That someone who has such a sophisticated back end, now that they can just have a front end in Amazon Prime to be able to put up a QR code and just have that go right to someone's Amazon account. They don't have to log in. They just hit a button. So on one hand, that is fantastic because it's at scale, it's frictionless, people are already signed up, all those kinds of things. Chris, you and I, we spoke a bit, and you had a question we didn't get to yet. Just what gives you a little bit of pause? And Amazon actually gives me a lot of pause, and that is because if you're a brand and you're there, that is a wonderful thing. But the fine folks at Amazon do have a habit of mining the data of what works for certain brands and then going out and making Amazon basics and undercutting the people they got the data from. So on one end, I think that is a fantastic frictionless platform for shoppable TV. But on the other hand, I think brands need to be aware of technology can be a wonderful thing. It can also be a damaging thing.
So you think, wait a minute, so just so I'm clear, you think Amazon would take advantage of the data for their own purposes?
Oh, just a shot in the dark there, Chris. Yep.
How dare you?
I may add one thing, because I tend to look at platforms like Roblox just to see how they're leveraging the technology and the communities that they've put together. So like, what is the optimum sort of experience? I think John asked the question. You could almost see down the road, if you look at Snap's investments and Meta's investments in immersive, VR technology, you can see what you want, you can experience what you want, and then you can buy what you want at the same time. And effectively, for a different audience, but with the same aspirations in mind, Roblox is doing that in gaming. They have their own tokens, their own coins, the creators are building their own games, and it's a circular economy within that platform. And if you really look at Amazon, what they're building with the pro games, the ability to buy Fanatics shirts, etc. Walmart the same. I think that's where a lot of the big platforms are trying to drive this. To Chris's point, it's good that you both called Chris, by the way, makes it easy for me. But you can see where if they've captured the community within their platform, it's going to be a frictionless purchase process. And that's where I think a lot of it's going. But again, might be driven from outside the traditional players, much like TV commerce was.
And one thing to jump on that point, you guys, I just got my update to Chrome. And in Chrome now, you can highlight a part of an image. So they had the example of a woman carrying a luggage, right? You can actually hover over that luggage and it floats, click on that, and then suddenly you have the search pop up and you can buy right there, right? So it's actually in the web browsing experience, that's part of it. And so I think that I liked your point about the technology and the scaling aspects are now maybe coming to the place where maybe now this dream is becoming real, and our definition of shoppable TV expanding, so that it's a bigger umbrella, it's a bigger ecosystem.
For sure. And I do think that a lot of the folks that we've worked with, our colleagues, new agencies, they're great opportunities now, particularly with the historical context again of what DR and performance marketing is. It's very timely for the shoppable video discussion.
Yeah.
Well, guys, great job on the questions. I've come back on screen to close things out, but phenomenal session. Ron, Chris, great conversation today. Thank you so very, very much. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. Before we close out, I'd like to take a moment to invite you to join us for our next episode of the PDMI Take 20, hosted on Wednesday, November 13th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. I'd also like to let you know that registration for the PDMI Spring Conference, PDMI, scheduled April 7 through 9 in Miami at the Eden Russ Hotel, now open. Those who register by Thanksgiving will save $100 on their badges via our early bird program that we offer. Plus, you'll save nearly $300 per night on your hotel rooms when you book at the Eden Rock Hotel through the PDMI booking link, which you'll receive after you get your badge that you buy on the PDMI website. So to get your badge in your hotel room, please visit thepdmi.com. That's thepdmi.com. We'll see you all next time, and looking forward to seeing you in person in Miami. Thanks again, everyone, and make it a great day.
Thank you.